Seal number 2. I didn't realize that I had the seals written in my comment here. I forgot. I wrote this quite a while back, and I forgot what the contents were. Seal judgments are conditions and let me try that one again. Seal judgments are conditions and persecutions, not yet divine wrath. Okay, I did this earlier, but let's briefly survey the first 5 seals. The first 5. So, again, another table which is similar to what we were just looking at. For those of you who are into tables, this is might be easier for you. First seal, rider on a white horse, conquest, nature, deception, human ambition, possibly Antichrist. I'm going with that it is Antichrist, but I could be wrong because it doesn't actually say it's Antichrist. It just talks about a rider on a white horse going to conquer and to conquer. And he's got a bow, but he doesn't have any arrows. Seal number 2, the second one, is the red horse, which many identify as war. I also do. And we're just looking at human warfare in general. Although, even though we've seen these things before in history, we've seen conquerors go forth, we've seen human ambition, we've seen deception, we've seen false Christs and things like that in the past, the scale at which these things are going to be unleashed on planet Earth at this point should be in an elevated position. They should be, when Jesus calls these the beginning of birth pangs in Matthew chapter 24, I believe he's trying to indicate that this pregnancy has been going on for many, many months. We know there's been a baby on the way, but now that the birth pangs have started, we know we're nearer to delivery than ever before. The delivery of the baby, we could say, is either the coming of Messiah or the setting up of his kingdom on planet Earth at the end of the age, at the culmination of this time period, whatever you want to call it. That's the baby. So it's not necessary to look at your newspaper today and look at wars. You know, there's wars going on around the world right now. It's not necessary to look at them and say, well, this means we're in the middle of the middle of the 7-year tribulation, or the seals have already been broken or something. Actually, I don't believe the seals have been broken yet. I believe that the first seal being broken, we should be able to recognize when Israel signs some form of peace agreement, a peace experiment, if you want to call it that, with her hostile surrounding neighbors, primarily Muslim neighbors, Islamic neighbors. And in so doing, it will allow for a ceasefire agreement to take place in the Middle East between her and her neighbors. And so it will be unparalleled, I believe, and I don't think it'll be something that will be easily missed on the headlines of the world newspapers. So watch for some type of agreement. Will we know who the person is that brokered the agreement? There might be a public figure up front like there normally is, like a U.S. president or something like that. But that could possibly be Antichrist right up front. I don't believe it will be. It might be him in the background pulling the strings like the master, like the puppet master that he is. All right, let's keep going. So we got second seal, red horse. We've already looked at these, so I'm kind of going quickly through it. Black horse for the third seal. It represents famine and economic collapse. Of course, this is usually on the heels of worldwide war. Whenever you have a world war, famine and economic collapse are closely connected with world war. So that's no secret. Fourth seal is the pale horse, which is death, which is pestilence, death by sword and beasts. Again, similar to the few before it, where a worldwide war at a massive scale where millions of people are losing their lives is obviously going to result in human warfare, economic collapse, pestilence, death by sword. The beast part there, that's a bit odd. We'll have to talk about that a different day. Is that death by beasts of the earth? Is it death by one of the beast leaders in control at this time? And even though it does talk about death by sword, a quarter of the earth, it doesn't, if you read through that part in the book of Revelation carefully, it doesn't mean that this fourth rider actually does kill a fourth of the people of the earth. It just means he has the power to do it. And then the fifth seal is the martyrs crying out, right? The fifth seal there. Martyrs crying out, persecution of the saints, primarily Christians, but it's only because he went after the Jewish people beginning at the midpoint of the week as well, and he couldn't get them because they had this place prepared for them. And go back and read Revelation chapter 12. He had this place prepared. They had this place prepared for them, Israel. And so Antichrist, the dragon, decides to pour out his wrath on Christians because he can't reach us. So let's keep going in my study here. Not there. I want to go here. Here's what I have to say. Nothing in the text suggests that God is directly pouring out wrath in these first 5 seals. Even though it's Jesus that's breaking the seals, yes, I recognize that. What's the significance of that? My pre-tribbers would push back. If it's not the wrath, Ariel, you pre-wrather, why would John make sure that we would know that exclusively only Yeshua can pour out the wrath? Why? What's the point if it's break the seals? If it's not wrath, what's the point in focusing that it's Yeshua? Well, again, it's reading into the text to say that this must be proof that it is wrath that's being poured out. Remember, wrath of the Lamb is going to be something that's mentioned here later on. I'm simply saying that what we need to recognize is that the 70th week of Daniel is a prophesied time frame given all the way back in the book of Daniel, chapter 9, given to Daniel so that this information could be preserved by Israel and picked up again by the church when the time came for us to be ready for this time frame. So this time frame is going to culminate in Jesus returning and establishing his kingdom. So I could say with equal strength, like the pre-tribbers do, that the force of Jesus opening the seals is because the scroll itself, you remember the scroll's in the hand of him who sits on the throne, the scroll itself with the 7 seals on the outside represents the title deed to planet Earth. And God holds that scroll. And God has already promised way back in the Psalms, ask of me and I will give you the nations, he says to his messianic king that he establishes on his holy hill. This is in Psalm chapter 2. Ask of me and I will give you the nations. God the Father says to the Son. And in Daniel chapter 7, Daniel sees a vision of this one like the Son of Man riding on the clouds, approaching the Ancient of Days, sitting on his throne. Of course, the figures in view there are the Ancient of Days would be God the Father, and the Son of one like the Son of Man would be Jesus. And in that story, if you go back and read Daniel chapter 7, it ends with the throne sitter, the Ancient of Days, giving the kingdom to the cloud rider, the Son of Man, and to the people of the kingdom. So back to this scroll. I think I'll flash this in post-production. The scroll with the 7 seals on the outside represents, as many have said, recognize, I'm not the only one to come with this, I didn't make this up. It represents the title, we could say that it represents the title deed to planet Earth. Who's going to own planet Earth? God says, I've already promised it to my Son. Antichrist says, no, I want it. Give it to me. He's been usurping, he's been exercising his authority since the incident in the garden where mankind was tricked into eating the fruit from the forbidden tree and following headlong into sin. So mankind kind of forfeited his right to have authority over the earth in some regards, and Satan took control. But Jesus, by his death on the cross, being the lamb slain, became the only one who's worthy to take control of this kingdom. So God says it's yours. So this scroll with the 7 seals, Jesus is that lamb worthy to open because by his very blood, he is the only one worthy to take this title deed and take control of the earth. And indeed, that's what he's going to do at the end of the 70th year. So 70th week, at the end of the 7 years. So that's what I think is scripturally sound. We don't have to insert some imaginary, because Jesus is the one opening of the seals, that means that the wrath of God is being kicked out. Instead, look at this saying right here in Revelation 6:10. Notice who's speaking. The martyrs of Jesus are crying out for justice. And what are they saying? How long, O Lord, will you refrain from judging and avenging our blood on those who dwell on the earth? Revelation 6:10 NASB. Let's go back over this chart. All right. let me erase some of this. This is getting kind of messy. All right. If the fifth seal martyrdom is connected to the Great Tribulation, and it's the fifth seal when this martyrdom happens, which doesn't happen until the midpoint of the week at the revelation of Antichrist, notice that the first four seals have been ongoing already. They've already been cracked open. The 70th week of Daniel began 3.5 years ago. But the Great Tribulation, it is initiated at the midpoint of the week. By the way, all four rapture views, pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, pre-wrath, we all agree that the Great Tribulation kicks off at the midpoint of the week with the revelation of Antichrist declaring himself to be God sitting in the temple. Go back and read 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 all over again. The point I'm trying to make now is that if it's at the fifth seal that the martyrs cry out to God and say, how long, does this not indicate that God's judgment has not yet been poured out? And indeed, the day of the Lord that we can see right here on my screen doesn't kick off until after the rapture, after the sixth seal, and at the initiation of the seventh seal, meaning the activities of the day of the Lord, which are the judgments of God, aren't going to be poured out on planet Earth until the church has been rescued. So let's go back over to my study. And so if you look at this question, how long, O Lord, that question, I say, would make little sense if God's wrath was already being poured out. Are you following along with me? Someone please explain to me the hole in my logic, because I don't see that there is a hole. How long, O Lord, are you going to refrain from judging? These are the martyrs crying out. They're losing their lives in mass. And they're crying out for vengeance. They already know that God has promised that he's going to pay back those who punish them. That's also in Thessalonians, by the way. I believe chapter 4, maybe. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. It might be 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, somewhere around there. It's also true that God has a precedent. In the past, he has rescued his people, sometimes allowing them to go through tribulation, sometimes rescuing them before something happens. But if we turn straight to the examples that Yeshua gave us, meaning the example of Noah's flood, as well as the example of Lot with Sodom and Gomorrah, in the case of Noah, God rescues Noah, brings him into the ark, shuts the door, and then the destruction of the flood destroys everyone outside of the ark. Notice the destruction doesn't take place until Noah is in the ark. The destruction represents the judgment of God, and he brings Noah into the ark before the destruction falls. Likewise with Lot. Lot is picked up by the angels, he and his 2 daughters and his wife, and they are carried out of the city. Of course, we know his wife turns back. She turns into a pillar of salt. It's her own fault. The angels, they didn't judge her. She judged herself, you could say. But Lot and his 2 daughters, they hurry on and go outside of the city, and Lot even pleads with them. Go back and read the story. Please wait till I'm in the safe spot until you pour out judgment. Wait until I'm there and then pour out judgment. And they're like, okay, dude, hurry. You know what we would say in Korean, pali pali, right? You need to get going because we got to pour out judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah, and we can't do it until you get out to that little city. And so Lot is removed out of harm's way, and then judgment falls. So notice, how long, O Lord, will you refrain from judging and avenging our blood? The martyrs are crying out. They realize that they're losing their lives at the hands of Antichrist. And notice, if this were the judgment of God, wouldn't they be crying out, how long, O Lord, are you... Now, of course, this is my supposition, but shouldn't they be saying, how long, O Lord, are you going to continue to judge us? But that's not what they say. How long will you refrain from judging and avenging our blood on those who dwell on the earth? Meaning the earth dwellers, those who dwell on the earth. This is echoing from Isaiah 26, where God says, I'll judge those who dwell on the earth. The earth dwellers, which becomes kind of a technical term in the book of Revelation, represents those who are the wicked. Who's judging the saints at this point in time? Well, it's Antichrist's persecution, but it is also being carried out by wicked humans who are doing the Antichrist's bidding. Anyone who's been hired by Antichrist to go search anywhere in the world where Christians and Jews are hiding out and to take their lives, Antichrist is probably going to just give the green light to, it's open season on Christians, so to say, and Jews. So let's keep reading. Point number 3, God's wrath is explicitly declared at the 6th seal, not before. This is my answer to the pre-tribbers who like to say that by not recognizing the seals as the wrath of God, this represents a weakness in the position on the part of the Prewrathers. This is what the pre-tribbers, gotquestions.org, thinks. This is their opinion. They think that we Prewrathers position that the seals are not the wrath of God. They think that that's a weak position. I go on to say, again, God's wrath is explicitly declared at the 6th seal, not before. Again, this is a crucial textual turning point. Notice what Revelation 6:17 says. This is the earth dweller speaking, by the way. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? This is important because this seems to indicate in no uncertain terms that the wrath has arrived, that it hasn't been ongoing yet, even though it is the unbelievers who are making this declaration. It is John who's been given these words of prophecy by the Lord Jesus himself. This gives us the assurance we don't have to automatically discount. I dialogued with someone over this point on a YouTube that I made earlier, and they said, obviously this can't be trustworthy prophecy because these are unbelievers crying out, saying, hide us from the wrath of God and from the one of him who sits on the throne and from the land, for the great day of the wrath has come. Who's able to stand? They said this can't be prophecy because this is unbelievers crying this. But I beg to differ. Jesus is in control. He is the one who sees the future. He knows the future before it's going to happen. He tells the future to John, and John records the words. So as sure as these words are going to happen because Jesus dictates them to John, we can also be assured of the soundness of what they're saying. The great day of their wrath has come. Now, the there, by the way, is the one who sits on the throne and the Lamb. FYI, just by side note, there's a textual variant in some Bibles that reads, for the great day of his wrath has come. And the his would be, I believe, Yeshua rather than, or it might be God. It's likely God and who's able to stand because we talked about wrath of God. I think it's KJV that does that. In fact, I'll just show this to you right now real quick. Revelation 6, scrolling down to verse, starting in verse 15. This is where the quote comes in from the unbelieving rulers. Revelation 6:15. This is NESB for a moment. Then the kings of the earth and the eminent people and the commanders and the wealthy and the strong and every slave and every free person hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. By the way, that's a quote from, or that's a reference to an Old Testament passage as well. But look at verse 16. And they said, these people that were just mentioned by John, they said to the mountains and the rocks. This is the part that's pulled in from a prophecy. Let me try that one again. And they said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the sight of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. And now verse 17, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? I believe that we can even see if I click on this textual variant, literally face. Nope, it doesn't. Oops, didn't want to do that. Let's try that one again. Let me just show it to you this way without getting too complicated. So when we get to the verse 16, it says, they said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the sight of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the land, for the great day of their wrath. So it says, for the great day of their wrath has come in verse 17 of Revelation. NLT also has the great day of their wrath, ESV, their wrath, Berean Standard, their wrath. But notice what happens when we get to the KJV, for the great day of his wrath has come. Who should be able to stand? So there's some textual variant in that one word Is it the wrath of God or is it the wrath of Jesus? Well, actually, for the sake of our study, it doesn't matter whose wrath it is, because Jesus clearly is the one, in no textual variants, that cracked open the seals earlier. He's the one that's worthy, right? Revelation chapter 5. He's the one that opens the seals. We can see that if we go back to, if we go back to the beginning of Revelation chapter 6, the very first verse says, "Then I saw when the Lamb broke one of the seven seals." So it's definitely Yeshua cracking them open. As far as whose wrath it is right here in verse 17, it doesn't matter if it's the wrath of God or the wrath of God and the Lamb, because the people on earth recognize that it's wrath. And that's the main point. And it's at this point that we can begin to get kind of laser focused on the verb tense, or what's going on with this particular wrath. And so I'm going to read down through this, and then we're going to call it quits for tonight. The Greek verb here is eilthen, and it's an aorist tense verb. And it's commonly understood by Prewrath scholars as an ingressive aorist, meaning wrath has just arrived at this point. Understand what I mean? Often, aorist tense is translated by many passages as a simple past because of the, I'm not trying not to get too technical, but basically, and I'm not a Greek scholar, so I'm leaning on the details given to me by Greek scholars. But lexicons indicate that this Greek verb tense aorist doesn't really carry a tense. It rather imports its tense from the surrounding context, which is why really it has no tense. The term aorist means tenseless. It means no tense, basically. It means without tense, aorist. So eilthen is, we could translate it as a simple past, right? The great day of the wrath has come, or the great day of the wrath arrived, as in ed past participle, arrive, right? However, the nature of the context of what they're describing seems to indicate, and this is borne out by the fact that when we jump into chapter 8, verse 1, after the interlude of chapter 7, but when we jump into chapter 8, we begin to start reading about more judgments that are poured out on planet Earth. Indeed, the angels are told, "Do not harm the earth until we seal the servants of God on their foreheads," right? The 144,000. The withholding or the pausing of judgment, the withholding of anything being poured on planet Earth, seems to also indicate that the wrath hasn't been poured out yet. So what I go on to say is that aorist tense commonly understood by Prewrath scholars as an ingressive aorist. Ingressive meaning, how did I describe this? Ingressive meaning wow, I just suddenly forgot what ingressive means. Let me pull up. Ingressive means relating to having the quality or character of entering. There we go, yeah. Ingressive. So ingressive means relating to the quality of entering something, the beginning of something that was not previously present, but now has become present. That's what I mean by ingress there, or ingressive. So the nature of this aorist seems to be recognized as ingressive. I am not doubting the aorist tense. That's fact. But the fact that it is ingressive is speculative, I admit. Not every scholar agrees that it is ingressive. That's what we simply call context. But the tense is not questionable. It is aorist tense. That's not presumption. That's not speculative. That's fact. But aorist, ingressive, the ingressive aspect of it is what I'm saying is speculation on my part, but I'm not the only one who believes that. So what the implication is at this point, and then we'll close with this, is that the first 5 seals are not God's wrath, even though Yeshua opened them. They're not the wrath of his Father, but rather the beginning of sorrows, right? Compare from Matthew 24, 4 through 8, like Jesus said, meaning they're conditions of deception, war, famine, death, and persecution that precede the day of the Lord. So going back over to my chart again, The first 4 seals here simply represent all of this bad stuff that is connected. Let me get rid of that one. That was weird. I didn't know it would do that. Give me a second. The first 4 seals, I'll just draw a square around them. The first 4 seals, why didn't you turn into a square? Oh well. The first 4 seals do represent bad stuff happening on planet Earth. But do they have to represent the wrath of God on planet Earth? No, they don't. Why not? Because it's not until the 5th seal and well into it that the martyrs cried out and say, God, how long are you going to withhold your judgment, your punishment, your retribution, your vengeance on those who are persecuting us? And that, along with the fact that it is the earth dwellers who recognize at the 6th seal sign, with the sky splitting open like a scroll, and the cosmic disturbances, right, the sun, moon, stars behaving oddly, that's when the earth dwellers look up into the sky, see the Father sitting on the throne, see the Lamb seated next to him, and that's when they cry out, fall on us and hide us from the wrath, because his wrath has arrived. And I think that's the best way to deal with this particular part of the book of Revelation. And that's going to do it for tonight. We'll call it quits, and we'll pick this up next week, starting with point number 4. Prewrath is supported by the literary flow of the book of Revelation at this point in time. That'll do it for Eschatology, a biblical study of end-time events.